their lives to help us. Final destination, the district of Baba Ama. We're warned, if the army spots us, they will shoot. The city we've entered is Syria's third largest. Homs is the toughest centre of resistance to the country's police state. Nowhere more than the district of Baba Ama, home to 30,000 people. That night we're taken to a street protest. However tiny, this is part of what they call Free Syria. For the protesters, just being here could mean arrest. This is an act of defiance. This is the Syrian uprising. They've been doing this every day for nearly a year. And they have to protest here, in these side streets, or risk being shot. They exercise liberties they've only dreamt of before, like mocking the president. Bashar Assad and his father before him have ruled over Syria for 40 years. The regime says these people are criminals and terrorists. Dissent is met with brute force. In Baba Ama, they're hemmed in by armoured vehicles. In the district streets, the fear is suffocating. Surrounded by children and grandchildren, we meet Rashida Al-Yassin. She tells me she lost 3 generations of her family in the past few months. Her grandson Khalid was killed by Syrian forces. He'd simply gone out to get food.
On Friday, there was no bread, so he said, "I will bring you some from our house." On the way, a shell came down and hit him on his shoulder.
Her son, Ali, was shot and killed as he joined a protest after praying at the mosque.
Given our situation, I expected something like this. The way they are hitting us, I expected such a thing. The protest was peaceful. They were holding olive branches and shouting, "God is great."
Her husband and a brother-in-law died too. In response, militiamen have taken to the streets. They're here, they say, to protect the people, part of a new force, the Free Syrian Army. All are deserters from the government forces.
They told us to shoot the protesters. I refused. I cannot kill my own countrymen. The officers are pigs. I turned my gun around and shot at the officer that gave the order. I shot at him and ran.
Almost from the beginning, it's been Syrian government propaganda that armed groups, or armed gangs as they're described, are supporting the opposition. Now, after months of protesters being shot down in the streets, that myth has become reality. More and more are joining the insurgency. A gun battle signals another defection. Soldiers are running into Baba Ama under cover of darkness, fired on by members of their old unit. 5 make it out, but a 6th man does not.
We heard him screaming, but then we were under heavy fire. We couldn't go back to get him. The other soldiers were chasing us.
How many follow these men to join the Free Army will determine the outcome of the revolution. New front lines were emerging. following sectarian divisions. Most of the country is Sunni Muslim, but its rulers come from a minority sect, the Alawites. Syria isn't yet a simple story of Sunnis against Alawites and their allies, the Shiites and Christians, but it could become that. From Bab Amma, it was starting to look like a war of neighbourhood against neighbourhood. Abu Muhammad is one of its defenders. Before the uprising, he was a tobacco smuggler. He says there was no other work for Sunni Muslims. Now he's one of those in charge. He says government snipers attack from just across the road. The gunmen here insist their role is solely to protect civilians. But there's no doubt the conflict is escalating.
We set out to ambush some of the snipers firing at civilians from the rooftops. Thanks be to God, we succeeded in killing at least one.
These are the streets of Bab Amma.
But the target for the district's new breed of citizen journalists, like this British Syrian, remains President Assad.
Every second a rocket could land right next. After he shot the first bullet, killed the first guy, he actually shot the fear in our hearts. No one was scared anymore. We would rather die than to live under his control.
Baba Amma's people had a promise from the rebels. They would never abandon them. But we left wondering, how long could they hold out? After 2 months, we're able to return to Homs, still in rebel hands. On the way, we meet a large group of Free Army fighters. We join them as they prepare to attack a nearby army base. They're going to try to get this bomb up to the entrance and detonate it. It's just before dawn. The attack is big, 100 men. They seem well trained and have a battle plan. They're to start it by firing the heaviest weapons in their arsenal, even though they have just 2 of them. Then the base starts to return fire, just as our cameraman Fred Scott is filming.
The sun came up, shooting started, and nothing really went to plan.
The rebels mainly have Kalashnikovs. The army, artillery. Mortars start to drop on the hillside.
We were pretty much pinned down the whole time until it was time to go.
Okay, ball on the Fred, move with the guys.
After nearly an hour of exchanging fire like this, we had to run away.
Get across this fast. Go, go. That's a bad place here. Go.
They don't get their bomb even close to the base. The attack has failed.
Okay, can you tell me when?
I don't know. Yeah. All of these men are Syrian army defectors, and they've been attacking in the base below men who until only recently were their comrades in arms.
It's not wanted. This is direct.
Oh, thanks. Remarkably, they escape without casualties. The rebels believe that most of the army wants to join them. But the commander of this rebel unit is tired of waiting.
If they wanted to defect, they would have gone long ago. The crimes of the Assad regime, from the start of this revolution until now, are very clear. So they don't have any excuse not to defect. They should be with us.
For some, this is a religious war, and one they feel they're winning. But while we were with them, the regime was preparing an offensive. It would start just a few miles away, in Homs. The shelling is relentless, indiscriminate. Artillery against residential areas. We head towards the city. We're told it's impossible to get in. The government's army is attacking from the Christian, Shiite and Alawite areas. The rebel Free Army has fallen back to the Sunni enclave of Baba Amma. It's surrounded. But the rebels have a lifeline, a tunnel, right under the front lines. We slip through the outer cordon around Homs. This was the uprising's best-kept secret, the only way in or out of Baba Amma.
We ran into a metal shed, and there was a gaping hole and 6 inches of mud, and climbed down these rungs about 20 feet into pitch blackness. What the hell is going on here?
Above ground, we emerge into a ghost town. It already seems very different from the last time we were here. The streets are empty. Everyone's waiting for the next round of shelling to begin.
بابا عمر 2/11/2011 بابا عمر تقصف الله أكبر. المشفى ضربوا المشفى.
Shells come in every few seconds. It's not a battle. Baba Amma has no heavy weapons. Shelling's been going on here all morning now, and what you hear over and over again from the people is that they feel abandoned by the outside world. We take cover in a house. A family's sheltering too. But the houses here have thin walls, no basements. There's barely any protection.
The children are so afraid. They follow me around the house. I say, don't worry, everything will be okay. God will take revenge for us.
The makeshift clinics are overwhelmed. There are no supplies and few doctors.
I want your face. I want to show the face.
People come here because they're afraid of arrest at a state hospital. Even here, many hide their faces, terrified the regime will hunt them down.